Sing them over again to me, wonderful words of life. Let me more of their beauty see, wonderful words of life. Words of life and beauty, teach me faith and duty. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Christ the Blessed One gives to all wonderful words of life. Sinnerless to the loving call, wonderful words of life. Also freely given, wooing us to heaven. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Sweetly echoes the gospel call, wonderful words of life. Offer pardon and peace to all, wonderful words of life. Jesus, only Savior, sanctify forever. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life.
Very good songs. That one I did not know, but boy, it was a powerful melody. It's been said that other than the Bible, the hymn book has seen more souls saved than any other resource that the church has, and I think that that's no doubt true. I would not argue with that at all. The significance of hymns throughout our history, it's quite a heritage. But hymns weren't always the way they are today. For the most part, hymns were, well, the singing in the church was from the Psalter. They were mostly psalms that were put to a melody or to a chant, and this is the way it worked for years. One of the songs we're going to deal with tonight is one of Isaac Watts' songs, and Isaac Watts is really the one credited with the modern day hymn. And now we are the opposite. We sing more hymns and spiritual songs than we do psalms. So I wish I had the ability to see hundreds of years into the future to see what trends pop up. But during this time of the year, there are a number of hymns and spiritual songs that you hear everywhere you go. As a matter of fact, you get to a point where you're just simply tired of them by about the end of November, right? They're in every store, they're everywhere. But for some reason, some of them I really never tire of because the words are so profound. And I think it would do us good sometimes to stop and look at the words. Like that song he sung tonight, what a powerful hymn, and the words were just simply amazing. I pointed out to Laura, one of the songs you hear quite a bit now is Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Go home and read the words of that song. I don't know of a song that's packed with more theology than that one, and it's really amazing. But tonight we're going to look at three of these seasonal hymns and look at the stories behind them. And so if you go to the next one, I'm going to tell you a story about this guy. This past week, I was able to go in with Laura, and we were practicing with her choir, and after that choir class, she had what was the grades? 8. her 8th graders came in. And I presented the PowerPoint lesson that I'm going to present to you tonight to them. They all had a consensus, the choir did, that this guy is who I remind them of. so dead ringer, huh? All right, you can go to the next. Slide there. We went through Silent Night. Now, Silent Night is what is called the most famous Christmas carol in all the world, and there's good reasons for it. If you go to the next slide there for me, the poem's creation was, to me, simply amazing. Now, I'm excited about hymn histories and the stories of the making of the hymns because I tried my hand at writing songs, and it's not easy at all. And it's really amazing that we have the amount of hymns that we have. And many of them are just melodies that you simply can't forget. This is one of those. Joseph Moore was the man. He was a priest up there in Mariafar. That's the closest pronunciation that Laura and I can come up with. Laura took Germany. Was it in high school or college? Oh, you're didactic. You studied it on your own. All right. Well, not all of us are like that, but this is Austria. And, of course, you all are familiar with Austria, and this is way up in the Alps. You want to talk about snow. There's plenty of it there, all right? And this song was written shortly after Napoleon. I asked the students that day if they knew Napoleon, and they said, "You mean the ice cream?" That's Neapolitan. Napoleon. Something about Napoleon that's curious is that in the beginning, all of Europe lauded him as the great liberator. Beethoven dedicated, Laura, it was his 3rd symphony, which he called Eoric, which is translated from the word heroic. And in 1804, when Napoleon crowned himself, Beethoven tore up the manuscript, but it has lived on and became one of his most famous symphonies. But when Napoleon came through these regions, they were ravished and just destroyed, many of them. And the economy was limping along, and people really had problems. This was called the year without a summer. And there was famine, and then there was terrible storms. They didn't have crops. It was just a terrible situation. And in 1816, Moore penned this 6-stanza poem in German entitled, and we practiced it quite a bit, Stille Nacht. Okay? Stille Nacht. You all got that? That is being translated Silent Night. And so he wanted to encourage his congregation. Well, he sort of forgot about it until 1818 when he really needed a song. And of course, as many of these hymns go, they were accompanied by instruments. Most of the hymns in your hymn book were written by people who wrote them and had an accompaniment with them. And it was no different at this time. If you would have backed up a few years, no hymn would have been written with accompaniment. As a matter of fact, a cappella literally means the way of the chapel or the way of the church. But at this point, you see hymn writers changing, adding instruments, and the organ was broke. One thing that a lot of these places have in common is where there were those great big organs, they were always breaking down. And one of the biggest culprits were mice. You see, they had bellows in them, and those bellows were made of leather, and mice would come in and destroy that, and then the organ's down. And good luck getting a man to hike up the Alps to fix your organ. So you had to wait till he came, and that might be a year. And here they've got a program they're wanting to put on, and he can't find anybody. So he goes down the road to a school teacher, a music teacher that he knows, and he gets together with him, and they decide that they're going to come up with a melody. His name was Franz Gruber. It's really amazing how quickly he came up with this melody. I try to come up with melodies all the time. There is no way in this world that I could come up with such a memorable melody as Silent Night. I mean, think about it. There's nothing like it, and it's so simple. Something I have found is the most simple melodies make the best songs. And it's simple because it's for the folks. It's not the high church music. Of course, it was first accompanied by the guitar, which added to its folksy flair. Ultimately, the organ upper guy did make his way up the Alps, and when he got there, he saw this sheet of music, and he went from there and took it to greater lengths. You could go to the next one. You could go to the next one. That's the little church, by the way. Go back there. That's the little church that they performed it in, this wee little chapel. You can go there and visit that today. It's near, is it Strasbourg? Is that what that town is called? What do you call it? Salzburg? Salzburg? That's my best German accent. Okay, you can go to the next slide. These were the most famous singers in America, right there. I mean, you talk about a cool bunch. Look at those guys. Definitely trendsetters. These folks were known as the Rainers and the Strassers. Well, they picked up this song, and they went all over America, all over Europe, even performed before King Frederick William IV of Prussia in their lederhosen. And it became so popular. How about the next slide? This then we see the Rayner family brought the carol to the United States, performed in New York City in 1839. The song was eventually translated into English by this guy, John Freeman Young, who was an Episcopal priest. It was published in 1871. So today, Silent Night has been translated into over 300 languages and is one of the best-selling singles of all time, with Bing Crosby's 1935 version being the most famous of the whole bunch. All right, how about the next slide? Here's something that's curious or curiously attached to the song Silent Night. Many of you probably now have heard of this. I remember the first time I heard of this story, I read it in National Geographic when I was in high school. This is the truth of 1914. This guy, Stanley Weintraub, wrote a book. He even knows the singer that started singing Silent Night from the German side of the trenches. He was a very famous opera singer. And there he was during World War I in a trench. And he starts singing it. And before long, the Allied forces begin to sing. And then someone decides they're going to be brave, and they meet in the middle, and they shake hands. They sing these songs together. They trade cigarettes. They even play, where's Simon? They play football. Yes. 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 They play football, which is the most important part. It's funny, we have football, but you barely use your feet, right? So the Christmas truce now is definitely attached to that. And this is an artist rendition of it, and you can see even a little tree there. A lot of this has become legend. They're not even, they've got a few, as a matter of fact, they're not even sure Silent Night was the first song. All right, go ahead and go to the next one. Oh, Holy Night. How many of you know this song? This is my favorite one of this time of the year. How about next? This one has a really interesting history. Oh, Holy Night has a rich history, but it begins in mid-19th century France, that's the 1800s, and it involves a wine merchant, a Jewish composer, and an American abolitionist, and the dawn of radio broadcasting. All of that is mixed up in this song. Who can pronounce this in French? Recrumar? That sound good? I think that sounds fine. So the priest went and he asked the wine merchant to write a poem for him. Placid Cateau. He writes this Christmas poem to celebrate, of all things, the renovation of the church organ because it had broken down. Do you see a pattern? Go to the next one, guys. So the poet, Chapeau, he was not a religious man. As a matter of fact, many believe he was an atheist, but they all knew that he was a socialist. Okay? Remember what time this is taking place in the world. And remember where it's at, in France, okay? And while traveling by stagecoach to Paris, he found inspiration and penned the poem Minute Cretans, Midnight Christians. And then you have the composer. He's pleased with the poem. He asked a friend, Adolphe Adam, who was a renowned composer of operas, to set the words to music. Adam was Jewish. He composed the music within a few days, creating the song initially titled Cantique de Noël. Okay? How about the next slide? The song was first performed at a midnight mass on Christmas Eve, 1847, by a local opera singer, and it was an immediate hit with the congregation. How about next? But there was a problem. They found out that an atheist socialist had written the poem and that a non-Christian Jewish man had written the music. Now, from the 30s till now, all of our famous Christmas carols in America have been written and sung by Jewish people. You don't believe me? Google it, okay? But in France, the Catholic Church, of course, banned it, Cantique de Noël. The problem was the French people kept singing it. How about the next slide? I don't want to go there yet. Do you know where it ended up? It ended up down, well, I will move on. I could go on all night. But go ahead and go back there. This guy right here, this is John Sullivan Dwight. He translated the song in 1855. Dwight was particularly moved by the third verse, which he adapted to express his anti-slavery stance. His powerful translation included the lines, "Change shall he break, for the slave is our brother." Look what year it is. He translates it, and it becomes an anthem for the North. And all around fires in the camps of the Civil War on Christmas Eve, guess what song they were singing? Right here. And so he published it in his magazine. It gained popularity, again, especially during the Civil War. How about the next slide? This song is also significant because it is the very first song that was ever broadcast over the radio. The very first. All right? So who got information through radio broadcast back then? Travelers, ships, and they'd receive things like Morse code. All right? It's just sort of sounds that went over the lines. But all of a sudden, on this night, Christmas Eve, 1906, they are out there and they hear a voice. And it's a voice that is reading Isaiah chapter 9. And when it was done, this guy right here performed and sang "O Holy Night," the first song to ever go over the radio. Isn't that interesting? When you talk about a history, a banned song that becomes an anthem for abolitionists in our Civil War and happens to be the first song to ever go over the radio. All right, how about the next one here? Now, this one right here is the one that I think is going to, well, joy to the world is not what you think it is at all. Okay? How about the next slide? It's first published in 1719 by Isaac Watts. Look how cool that guy is. And his best known song is "Joy to the World." I would argue with that. I think he has other songs that are better, but not much better. He's an English minister, which means he's in the Anglican Church. He's a writer who had a gripe with the lack of joy and emotion among congregants in worship service. And after Watts complained to his father about this issue, and this is the famous quote, Watts Sr. was said to have told him that if he struggled with the songs they sang, he ought to do something about it. And that's just what he did. And he's written some of my favorite hymns of all time. How about the next slide? So, where did he get the inspiration for for this song? From Psalm 98. Look here. Psalm 98, verse 8. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. So he borrowed from the psalm. But the version we're familiar with today is the second half of Watts' poem, Set to Music. It's one of the more unusual carols because it doesn't focus on the birth of Christ. Instead, it's actually about the second coming of Christ. It's not even about his birth. How many of you knew that? Well, neither did I. Because the way it's written, you can just about interpret it any way you want to. How about the next slide? So look at here. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. Let earth receive her king. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. Sure sounds like the first coming, right? The first advent, as they would say. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods and rocks and hills and plains repeat the sounding joy. That could be applied to the birth of Christ. He rules the world with truth and grace and makes the nation prove the glories of his righteousness, the wonders of his love. Sure sounds like a song about his birth, doesn't it? Well, everybody else seemed to think so also. How about the next slide? There's a lot of words here. I want to tell you something. I wrote none of this chart, or this slide. Anybody know where I got this? AI. This morning, was it you that showed me how to write the AI? So I asked AI, what is Isaac Watts's eschatological views? Eschatological means end time. All these words are AIs, okay? But they're pretty good. He was post-millennial. That is what I was sure of. And AI wouldn't lie, right? And so he's post-millennial. What does that mean? That means there's a victorious gospel. He believed that the gospel would go forth and eventually conquer the earth. Alexander Campbell was post-millennial. All of our brethren through the 1800s were post-millennial, okay? Saving sinners and leading to a future golden age, a millennial age. Campbell talked about a city built on a hill. Another member of the Disciples of Christ by the name of Ronald Reagan. You may remember him talking about America as a city built on a hill. He got that from reading Campbell as a young boy. The second coming. While Joy to the World is sung at Christmas, Watts intended it as a celebration of Christ's second coming, when sins and sorrows would no more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He's talking about a future reality where the curse is removed, okay? That's when the new heaven and the new earth comes, in his view. He had a form of dispensationalism. It wasn't like the modern premillennialist, but he still believed this. He believed that when Jesus came back, that's when the kingdom would begin, okay? And that's when he would rule. And so this song is about the earth receiving this millennial kingdom. And that's what we sing about when we sing this. However, you and I don't sing about that, do we? We have taken the words and we understand them to be just singing about Jesus, the King, and that the world ought to be overflowing with joy because we know that Jesus is ruling right now. I think Scott said the other night, how can you have a kingdom without a king? And vice versa. How can you have a king without a kingdom? It's going on right now, and Isaac Watts, he was off on this post-millennial view. How about the next one? So the idea is Jesus is coming again. And that's important. You know, we talk about remembering his birth. When should we remember or celebrate his coming again? I'll tell you what, we do it every week. When we gather around this table, We remember his death, burial, and resurrection. And how long are we to do this? Until he comes. You see, this, what we do here, this worship, when we commune with one another, it points to the day that Jesus is coming back. Okay? But this is a day when all strivings will cease, certainly, but every tear will be wiped from our eyes. And what a day that'll be. But even as we wait with hope, because even in the here and now, God is with us. And so, what's that? Glorified in his saints. That's right. So the hymns that we sing, they're really important. We need to understand the words. And what's curious and unique about Joy to the World is, even though he did not mean it to be a hymn that celebrates Jesus as King here and now, can you think of a hymn that does any better? And so, how about, I think that's it, by the way. We got another slide? That's it. Well, that's all, folks. Appreciate your fine attention, and hope you were able to glean something from this tonight. We want to encourage you to remember that Jesus is coming back. There's a lot of things that aren't sure today. We can't be sure of hardly anything, but we can be sure that Jesus is coming back. Tonight, if you're not a Christian, we want to encourage you to come as we stand and sing.
Hear the sweet voice of Jesus say, "Come to thee, I am the way." Hearken not